This trailer premiered at E3 2006 and was our first look at Lightning and Final Fantasy XIII. Now, at the time, people believed that most of this was in the game's engine, and when compared to the final product, a lot of it seems legit. The real problem happens right about here, where Square Enix put a fake HUD over the gameplay to make it look like somebody was actually controlling Lightning. Now, they eventually said that they just wanted it to be a projection of what they wanted the combat to be like, but it's still a pretty good example for today's lesson. Don't lie to the viewer.
Trailers can be hard to trust. They can state that everything you're about to see is actual gameplay, but there's no way to be 100% sure. The viewer has to have some faith that what they're seeing is the same as what they're being told. The more a publisher makes their fans question that faith, the harder it'll be to sell the game. Obviously, the advertising worked for Final Fantasy XIII, as we're still anticipating its sequel 7 years later, but this trailer is still misleading. The fight that takes place during the manufactured gameplay occurs in a cutscene in the game as the story approaches its final moments. Although she's alone in the trailer, Lightning is followed in the game by her compatriots Snow, Hope, Saz, Vanille, and Fang. The crew uses antimatter manipulation principle technology, or AMP for short, to land safely from a long drop. In the E3 2006 trailer, Lightning uses a gravity bomb to slow down a group of enemies, though she never uses a similar ability during combat in the first Final Fantasy XIII. There are many other differences between the trailer and the game released 3 years earlier. The trailer shows a mini-map of the battlefield that did not make the final cut in combat. In it, you can see Lightning, labeled in blue, actively switch between red-colored targets. The swirling circle in the top right of the trailer counts down when Lightning activates her Gravcon unit, and it jumps in rotation at the beginning of the first few edits. This suggests the montage we're watching might be a cut-down of a larger gameplay test, or it's presented that way to suggest it was. Even the word in the top right here, presumably overdrive, doesn't finish animating before we jump cut to Lightning hopping off a SciComm soldier. The combat system eventually used for Final Fantasy XIII is called the Command Synergy Battle System, and the trailer shows it in its infancy. Both the trailer and the game feature an active time battle gauge, labeled ATB. The trailer's gauge has 830 total points, and each of Lightning's abilities carries a casting cost. In the final game, the ATB is segmented into smaller bars, with the most the player can have being 6. The trailer's ATB gauge is tucked in the corner of the screen and placed closer to the middle of the screen in the final game. There are 5 command slots in the trailer, and some stay empty whether commands are issued to them or not. Lightning issues several attack commands, the level 3 fire spell Firaga, and something called V-Strike, presumably vertical strike. The ability menu on the left rotates up and down, and when the player selects Aerial, a description for the ability appears over the command queue. In the final game, ability descriptions appear at the very top of the screen. The trailer HUD also doesn't show any additional characters or list any information about the paradigm shift system, which probably wasn't finalized at the time. Enemy damage numbers appear, but each enemy's total health isn't visible. The text went from uppercase in the trailer to sentence case in the final game. The damage font remains the same, and the attack chains that are shown in the trailer exist in the game and appear under the opponent's life bar. The biggest discrepancy is this: the flashy, acrobatic style of RPG combat displayed in the trailer is just not the way Final Fantasy XIII plays. A year before this trailer premiered, Square Enix released Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, and obviously wanted every inch of the combat in 13 to be as cinematic as the movie. Although the trailer teases multiple options like knocking enemies into specific objects and vaulting through the environment, the combat in Final Fantasy XIII was considered rather simplistic in practice. It even added a mode called Auto Battle that almost let the game play itself. In fact, the type of run-and-gun slash turn-based combat dreamed up for this trailer is still unproven by Square Enix or any other developer. When this brief gameplay montage is taken on its own, it seems like much less of a mischievous offense. The transition to 3D did beg for a more cinematic take on the Final Fantasy combat system, and if the developers shot for the moon and came up short, why criticize their ambitions? The problem arises when you put the montage 25 seconds into the game's very first trailer, intentionally cutting it short so viewers can't accurately process what they're looking at. If you make a gameplay test, label it as such, just like Square Enix recently did with their announcement trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3, by indicating the footage resembled something now in development. When you show us gameplay, we assume it's gameplay, unless you tell us otherwise beforehand or immediately after. All the press releases the day this trailer was first shown didn't hint at all that the gameplay portion was not actually being played by anybody. Any silence on the part of the developer is blatant misdirection, and it can potentially sour the anticipation for a game. There is much more to this trailer than these 9 seconds of puppeted gameplay. We see Lightning's gunblade, the Blazefire Saber, in action for the first time. We're given a few more moments with Lightning in the scene on Eden, mostly featuring more flipping and shooting. In the end of the trailer, Lightning squares off against a Manus Vin war mech, which turned out to be 13's first boss encounter. We get a gorgeous flyby of the Sunleth waterscape, even though Lightning never visits the location in the final game. And we see several pre-rendered shots of the opening train battle, which Square admitted at E3 in 2006 was an animated cinematic. The music track, Blinded by Light, was written specifically for the trailer by Masashi Hamazu, who had previously composed music for Dirge of Cerberus and Final Fantasy X. Blinded by Light became the game's main battle music, and traces of it can be heard in Lightning's own somber theme. It's worth noting that the visuals in the trailer are oddly not a point of much contention, which is usually the case in debut trailers that pretend to be superior to the game they'll eventually become. Final comparisons might have noticeable differences, but the moments on Eden look remarkably similar in the trailer and game, and 13 still arrived as the undisputed most beautiful Final Fantasy game created up to that point. The major disparity between the two entities is how the game appears to play. Even by today's standards, the battle system suggested in this 7-year-old trailer seems impossible. Don't think any PR tomfoolery gets in the way of the actual cinema. This fight scene is awesome, and once you get all the players together in the actual game, it's even better. Square could have created a mountain of anticipation just from the in-game cutscenes and pre-rendered cinemas alone, but to matter-of-factly pitch the near impossible and deliver something else entirely is to play games with the expectations of your fans. And those aren't the types of games we like to play.
To be fair, Square's gotten a lot better with their advertising, but this kind of stuff still happens. Other demos and cutscenes that have faked a gameplay element or two include Capcom's debut of Deep Down, the first look at Madden NFL 06, the Call of Duty 3 trailer from E3 2006, and the E3 2005 trailer for Killzone 2. We also did a top 10 most misleading trailers of all time, which I'll post below on GT. And if you find any other fake gameplay trailers, let me know on Twitter at GameTrailersVO. See you next time.